Okay, get this. A 2,500-year-old body found in Northern Ireland. Um, the Balahi boy, they call him. And get this. The skin. Pink. Like they thought it was a crime scene at first.
Wow. I guess it makes sense though, right? Bogs can be incredible preservatives, all that acidic peat, the lack of oxygen, it kind of halts the decomposition process, like a time capsule
A
almost.
time capsule, exactly. And speaking of time capsules, we're diving into a whole bunch of recent discoveries today,
Mhm.
stuff that's really shaking up how we understand the past.
Oh yeah, we've got sunken ships, ancient love notes, Viking mysteries, the works.
If you're fascinated by, history secrets and all that, you're in the right place. So let's start with the Balahi boy. What else do we know about this guy?
Well, the cause of death, that's still a mystery. But the way he was buried, that tells us a lot about Iron Age rituals in Northern Ireland. We're talking, their beliefs about death, the whole nine yards. And analyzing his remains could tell us even more, like what he ate, his health, even his social status.
Fascinating. It's like putting together a puzzle, isn't it? Each piece gives you a little more of the picture.
Yeah, it really is.
Now, picture this. A 2,000-year-old villa in Italy. And guess who might have lived there? Pliny the Elder.
No way. You mean the Pliny the Elder? The one who wrote about Pompeii?
The one and only.
Hmm.
Could you imagine him witnessing the eruption of Mount Vesuvius from his own villa?
Oh man, that gives me chills just thinking about it. Especially since we have his account of the eruption. To actually be able to stand in the place where he may have stood watching this catastrophic event unfold, that would be mind-blowing.
Totally. Okay, shifting gears a bit.
Hmm.
We've got some potential drama brewing in the world of archaeology. Some newly discovered tombs in Greece, and they might belong to, wait for it, Alexander the Great's family.
Wow, that's huge. But, I mean, how can they even be sure? Identifying remains that old has got to be incredibly difficult.
Well, it definitely is. Especially when you're talking about figures of this magnitude. It requires a ton of careful analysis comparing the remains to historical accounts, the whole shebang. For example, one of the skeletons has a fused knee joint. And guess what? That lines up perfectly with descriptions of King Philip II's war wound.
So it really could be him.
Well, more research is needed, of course, but it's a pretty compelling clue. And speaking of rediscovering the past, a 4,000-year-old tomb in Ireland thought lost forever. Turns out it was just hiding in plain sight. Someone just needed to take a closer look.
Ah, classic. Happens all the time. It's a good reminder that history is all around us, just waiting to be rediscovered. But hey, enough with the tombs for now, right? Let's talk about some of the other cool stuff that's been turning up.
Let's do it. I'm ready for something a little less morbid, I guess.
Okay, how about this? A 30,000-year-old gold dress fastener found in England. It might have been made by Irish metalsmiths. It's crazy to think about how skilled these ancient craftspeople were, even back then.
30,000 years. It's amazing anything from that long ago even exists, let alone something so beautiful and intricate.
Right. And speaking of things that have stood the test of time, how about chocolate? They recently discovered a 19th century chocolate factory in Barcelona, Spain, with all sorts of cool stuff still intact, like the tools they use, the lead plates for labeling, the whole nine yards.
Ooh, I'd love to see that. It makes you wonder how much the process has really changed.
Right. And speaking of change, imagine finding a 3,300-year-old tablet that describes a war. That's exactly what happened with this Hittite tablet they found. It's basically a first-hand account of a wartime invasion. Talk about a window into the past.
Oh, man, that would be incredible to read. I'm always fascinated by those kinds of firsthand accounts. They,
Yeah.
they bring history to life.
Totally.
Okay, ready for some Viking intrigue? They found this medieval sword in a river in Poland, and it might be Viking. And get this, it has the inscription Ulbert on it, which could be the swordsmith's mark.
No way. That's like the ultimate Viking souvenir. Seriously, though, it's incredible to think about where that sword has been,
Yeah.
what it's seen, all the history it holds.
Yeah, it makes you realize that even back then, people and objects were traveling far and wide. The world was more connected than we sometimes imagine. Speaking of connections, they found the oldest known runes in Denmark on a 2,000-year-old knife. And get this, the inscription translates to small world.
Wow, that's really something. It makes you wonder, right? What did small world even mean to them back then?
Right. Like, did they have any concept of the world's vastness, or was their world much smaller, more intimate?
It's mind-blowing.
It really is.
Yeah.
And speaking of mind-blowing, get this. Researchers are using artificial intelligence to translate carbonized scrolls from Herculaneum. These scrolls, they were buried by the eruption of Mount Vesuvius. Talk about lost knowledge.
Wow, that's incredible. AI is changing everything, isn't it? Even archaeology. But I imagine there's some ethical considerations too, right? I mean, these scrolls are incredibly fragile.
Oh yeah, it's a tricky balance between unlocking knowledge and preserving these delicate artifacts.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of delicate artifacts, new research suggests that the Rongo script from Easter Island, those mysterious glyphs, well, it turns out they might actually be older than we thought, maybe even predating European arrival.
You're kidding. That changes everything we thought we knew about Easter Island and those glyphs. Talk about rewriting history.
Right. The past is full of surprises.
It really is. And speaking of surprises, let's talk about some of the recent discoveries that are challenging our assumptions about health and disease in the past.
Oh, I'm all ears. This is the stuff that really gets me thinking about the human experience, the challenges we face throughout history and how they've shaped us.
It's incredible what we're learning from ancient DNA. For instance, did you know that researchers have found evidence of Turner syndrome, Down syndrome, and even Klinefelter syndrome in ancient individuals?
No way. So these conditions have been around for much longer than we thought.
Exactly. It challenges our assumptions about how these conditions were perceived and treated in ancient societies, and it really underscores the universality of the human experience. Disability has always been a part of life, and compassion and understanding, those are timeless values.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It really makes you think about how we treat each other today, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And it's not just about understanding the past. These discoveries can also inform our present and potentially shape our future. Take, for example, the research suggesting a genetic link to multiple sclerosis that might have originated with ancient herders who migrated to Europe about 5,000 years ago.
Oh, wow. You mean there's a connection between these ancient migrations and a health issue we're dealing with today?
It's a fascinating possibility, isn't it? As these herders spread across Europe, they might have inadvertently spread this genetic variant too. It highlights the complex interplay between history, genetics, and our health.
It's like a bridge between then and now. A reminder that the past is always with us, shaping our present in ways we may not even realize. Speaking of the past, I read something recently about tuberculosis being found in Neanderthal remains.
Yeah, it's thought to be the oldest known case of tuberculosis, dating back tens of thousands of years. It's mind-blowing, isn't it? It makes you wonder about the impact this disease had on human evolution, how it might have shaped the course of our species.
Absolutely. It opens up a whole new chapter in the story of human health and disease. And speaking of new chapters, researchers have developed this incredible new method to test for anemia in ancient bones.
It's really a game changer. It allows us to track the prevalence of anemia throughout history, giving us a better understanding of its causes and consequences. It's a great example of how studying the past can help us improve healthcare in the present.
It really is. It's like our ancestors are giving us clues to help us solve modern medical mysteries. Now, let's shift gears and dive into the captivating world of shipwrecks. Those underwater time capsules, they offer us such unique glimpses into maritime history, don't they?
They absolutely do. From the icy depths of the Arctic to those warm tropical waters, shipwrecks can transport us back to the age of sail, full of stories of adventure, exploration, and sometimes tragedy too.
For sure. Like take the Franklin expedition shipwrecks. Those lost ships in the Arctic, they've always captured my imagination. What's the latest on the exploration of those wrecks?
Well, they've been able to do some amazing dives on the HMS Erebus and HMS Terror. They've recovered all sorts of artifacts, like a seaman's chest that's been down there for over a century.
It's amazing what they're finding. Those objects, they're like direct links to the past. You can almost feel the presence of those sailors who once held them.
I know, it's incredible, isn't it? But there's a downside, too. These dives are highlighting the impact of climate change on these wrecks.
Oh no, climate change is affecting even shipwrecks.
I'm afraid so. The warmer waters and stronger storms, they're accelerating the deterioration of these wrecks. We're losing valuable historical evidence.
That's heartbreaking. It's a reminder that climate change is impacting every aspect of our world, even the underwater realm. It's a call to action, wouldn't you say? Not just for the sake of our planet, but for the preservation of our shared history as well.
Absolutely. It's a race against time to document and protect these underwater treasures. And climate change isn't the only threat. Looting is a huge problem, too.
Right, I've heard about that. It's like stealing from history, robbing future generations of the chance to connect with the past.
Exactly. It's a tragedy. But let's not dwell on the negative, okay?
Yeah.
There are still so many exciting discoveries happening in the world of shipwrecks.
Okay, tell me something good. What else have they found?
Well, off the coast of Australia, they finally identified a wreck as the SS Nemesis, an iron-hulled steamship that sank back in 1904.
Wow, so they finally solved that mystery.
Yep. It's a reminder that the sea holds countless stories, and we're still uncovering them, bit by bit. And speaking of solving mysteries, they finally figured out what happened to the Milwaukee.
The Milwaukee. Refresh my memory.
It was a steamship that sank in Lake Michigan back in 1886 after a collision in thick fog. Took them long enough to figure it out.
Huh. Well, better late than never, right?
Huh?
I guess some mysteries take a little longer to unravel than others. It's like a giant puzzle, and we're slowly but surely piecing it together.
I like that analogy. And speaking of puzzles, sonar surveys are proving to be invaluable tools for finding shipwrecks. Like, off the coast of Florida, they found the HMS Tiger, a British warship that ran aground back in 1742 during the War of Jenkins' Ear.
The War of Jenkins' Ear. Wow, that takes me back to history class. I'd completely forgotten about that one.
Well, it was a pretty significant conflict, and this shipwreck adds a whole new dimension to our understanding of it. And get this, they were able to identify the wreck thanks to an old logbook that detailed the crew's efforts to lighten the ship after it ran aground.
A logbook from 1742. That's incredible. It's a reminder that sometimes the smallest, most unassuming objects can hold the key to unlocking major historical discoveries.
Absolutely. Every piece of the past, no matter how seemingly insignificant, has a story to tell. And speaking of stories, get this. Researchers have recently discovered 5 dugout canoes built between 5700 and 5100 BCE near Rome.
Whoa, that's over 7,000 years old. What are they doing in Rome?
Well, these canoes are some of the oldest boats ever found in the Mediterranean. They provide evidence of early maritime trade and the surprising boat-building skills of those who lived in that region thousands of years ago.
Wow, so people were sailing around the Mediterranean that long ago. It makes you realize how much history there is beneath the waves just waiting to be discovered.
Exactly. The oceans are full of stories, just like the land, and sometimes those stories intersect in the most unexpected ways.
I'm intrigued. What kind of unexpected intersections are we talking about?
Well, are you ready for some discoveries that might just leave you scratching your head? Things that are so out there, they make you question everything you thought you knew about the past.
Bring it on. I'm always up for a good mind bender.
Okay, how about this? A paper published last year claimed that a site in Indonesia called Gunung Padang is actually a pyramid built 25,000 years ago.
Wait, 25,000 years?
Yeah.
But pyramids are supposed to be, like, ancient Egyptian, right?
That's what makes this claim so extraordinary. If it were true, it would completely rewrite our understanding of ancient architecture and human civilization as we know it.
So is it true? Is it really a 25,000-year-old pyramid?
Well, that's where things get tricky. A lot of archaeologists are skeptical, to say the least. They think it's more likely a natural rock formation that just happens to resemble a pyramid. But hey, you never know.
True. Sometimes the most outlandish claims turn out to be true. Okay, what else have you got for me?
Okay, ready for another one. The Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam decided to team up with, wait for it, Pokemon.
Pokemon, as in Pikachu and all that.
The one and only. They created a whole collaborative exhibit blending fine art and pop culture.
Wow, talk about an unexpected pairing.
Yeah.
I wonder how that went down.
Well, let's just say it caused a bit of chaos. Tickets sold out almost instantly, the gift shop was mobbed, and some of the museum staff even got in trouble for their behavior during the exhibit.
Huh. I can only imagine. It just goes to show you, you never know what's going to capture the public's attention, right?
Right. And speaking of capturing attention, there's the ongoing saga of the stolen ruby slippers from the Wizard of Oz.
Oh yeah, those iconic slippers. I remember hearing about that theft.
Well, get this. The alleged accomplice in the heist was recently charged with witness tampering and making threats involving compromising photos.
No way. Talk about a plot twist. It's like something out of a movie.
I know, right?
Yeah.
It just goes to show you that truth is often stranger than fiction. And that's especially true when it comes to history.
Well said. This has been an incredible deep dive so far. We've covered so much ground, from ancient burial practices to the latest shipwreck discoveries, and even some truly bizarre events that make you question everything you thought you knew about the past.
It's been a wild ride, that's for sure.
It really has. But our journey isn't over yet. There's still so much more to uncover, so many more stories waiting to be told. We'll be back soon to delve even deeper into the mysteries of history.
Stay tuned. The past is calling. You know, it's amazing what you can learn from the simplest objects. Like they found this 300-year-old thimble in Northern Ireland. You might think, okay, a thimble, so what? But this one, it's special. Oh, what's so special about a thimble?
Well, first of all, it's super fancy, decorated, made in two pieces. Not your average thimble, right?
Yeah.
But the real kicker, it has an inscription, like "Still in Love Ever."
Like still in love ever. Wow, that's beautiful. Like it's giving Jane Austen vibes almost.
Right. It's like this tiny little thimble, and it gives you this whole glimpse into, romance, personal expression, all that stuff. It makes you wonder about the person who owned it, their story.
Totally. Okay, ready for a real head scratcher? Roman dodecahedrons.
Oh, those weird 12-sided things. I've always been fascinated by those. Like, what are they? Ancient dice? Alien artifacts?
Huh. Nobody knows for sure. There are tons of theories, though. Knitting tools, dice, surveying instruments, even weapons. And now, they've just found another one in England. This one's grapefruit size.
Grapefruit size. Okay, it's just getting weird.
Right. It's a real mystery. Although, you know what's funny? There's this whole thing online where people are like, duh, they're obviously for knitting. Historians are so clueless.
Oh, man. The internet, right. Always full of experts. Speaking of experts, did you hear about the religious tract they thought was written by Shakespeare's dad? Turns out it might have actually belonged to his sister Joan.
Really? Wow. I mean, that was a pretty tense time for religion in England, right? With Catholicism being suppressed and all.
Exactly. It makes you think about the risks people were taking to practice their faith back then.
For sure. And speaking of risk, can you imagine living in ancient Arabia? Talk about a challenging environment. Well, they just found this massive 4,000-year-old fortification around an oasis in northern Arabia.
A fortification. Like a wall.
Yep. It stretches for almost 9 miles. It shows how much effort they put into protecting their water source, you know. Talk about ingenuity.
9 miles. That's incredible. It makes you think about what people are capable of when they work together, even with limited technology.
But absolutely. And you know, walls weren't just for defense. Check this out. They found this half-mile long wall made of boulders off the coast of Germany, and it could be 10,000 years old.
10,000 years underwater. How did they even build that?
It's crazy, right? They think it was used to, like, funnel reindeer towards hunters. It's called the Blinker Wall.
The Blinker Wall. I kind of love that name. Okay, so ancient humans were way more sophisticated than we give them credit for.
Totally. Okay, how about this? One of the oldest surviving royal kitchens in Europe was just uncovered in Poland.
A royal kitchen. Now that's something I'd love to see.
I know, right? It gives you this glimpse into, like, the culinary practices of medieval Poland. Imagine all the feasts they must have prepared in there.
Right, it's like you can almost smell the roasting meat, hear the clinking of pots and pans.
I know. Makes you hungry, huh?
Totally. Okay, this next one might sound a little less exciting, but trust me, it's cool. They found this Neolithic cooking pot in Germany, and guess what was inside?
Ooh, I love these kinds of finds. Okay, what was it? Some exotic spice? Ancient recipe.
Even better, porridge.
Porridge. Seriously, that's what you're getting excited about.
Hey, don't underestimate porridge. It tells us a lot about what ancient people were eating,
Yeah.
what grains they were using, all that stuff.
Okay, fair enough. Plus, who doesn't love a warm bowl of porridge?
Exactly.
Okay.
This next one is for the wine lovers out there. It seems some Roman wines might have had a, shall we say, unique flavor profile.
Oh, like what? Vinegary. Musty.
Think more along the lines of spicy.
Spicy Roman wine. Now, that's something I'd like to try. What makes them think that?
They analyzed these Roman clay jars called dolia, which they use for making wine, and it seems like the fermentation process might have given the wine some unusual flavors. We're talking notes of toasted bread, apples, roasted walnuts, even hints of curry.
Curry-flavored wine. That's wild.
Right. Now, this next discovery might seem a bit random, but for anyone interested in genealogy, it's huge news. Guinness, the Irish brewery, just digitized all their old records, and they're searchable online.
Wow, that's a goldmine of information.
Exactly. Especially since a lot of official records in Ireland were destroyed in a fire back in the 1920s. These Guinness records could help fill in a lot of gaps in family histories.
That's amazing. Talk about a valuable resource.
Ugh.
Okay, ready for some art and architecture?
Always. What have they found?
Get this. They just discovered some medieval wall paintings hidden in the rafters of Christ's College, Cambridge. They seem to be celebrating a royal patron.
Hidden in the rafters. So they were, like, lost for centuries.
Yep.
And they're beautiful. All these vibrant colors depicting a red Lancastrian rose, a portcullis, maybe even a griffin. It's a real glimpse into the Tudor era.
I love those kinds of discoveries, you know. It's like history is revealing itself to us little by little.
Exactly. Oh, and remember that 30,000-year-old gold dress fastener we talked about earlier?
The one they found in England. The one that might have been made by Irish metalsmiths.
That's the one. Well, they've done more analysis on it, and it's even more amazing than we thought. It's shaped like two hands clasped together.
Yeah.
So intricate, so beautiful.
Wow, just imagine the skill it took to create something like that 30,000 years ago. It makes you wonder what other fashion secrets are still out there, buried in the earth.
Right. And speaking of fashion, they found this medieval belt loop in Poland, and it's amazing. It's made of metal and has this little figure on it. So much detail for something so small.
A belt loop with a little figure on it. Okay, that's pretty cool. It's like a tiny work of art. Right. And it gets even better. In Turkey, they found over 100 ornamental objects from 11,000 years ago that they think were worn in body piercings.
11,000-year-old piercings. That's pushing it back a bit, isn't it?
It is, and it just goes to show you that body modification is nothing new. It's been a part of human culture for a very long time.
It's like we think we're so modern, but so many of the things we do today have been done for centuries.
Exactly. Now, let's talk about some of the discoveries that are shaking up our understanding of ancient diseases.
Okay, hit me with it.
They found this 2,000-year-old skeleton in Brazil that has evidence of syphilis.
Syphilis. Wow, that's a pretty serious disease.
It is, and this discovery is causing quite a stir because it's the oldest confirmed case of syphilis ever found.
So does this change what we know about the origins of syphilis?
It definitely adds fuel to the debate. And here's the thing. This particular strain wasn't sexually transmitted.
Really? So how did it spread?
That's what researchers are trying to figure out. It just goes to show you that we still have so much to learn about the history of diseases. And speaking of learning, remember that new method they developed to test for anemia in ancient bones?
Oh, right. That was a pretty big deal.
Well, they're already using it to study ancient populations, and it's giving us some fascinating insights. It's amazing how studying the past can lead to breakthroughs in modern healthcare.
It really is. Okay, I have to ask about this one because it's just too weird. I read somewhere that they're using wasabi vapors to preserve ancient papyri.
Yep, you heard that right, wasabi. Apparently, it's really effective at killing fungus that can damage these fragile texts.
Wow, that's incredible. Who would have thought that the stuff you put on sushi could save ancient documents?
Right. Sometimes the most unexpected solutions are the best ones. Okay, ready to dive back into the world of shipwrecks.
Always. What else have they found?
Well, the exploration of the Franklin expedition shipwrecks is still ongoing.
Oh, yeah, those ill-fated ships in the Arctic. What's the latest on those?
Well, recent dives on the HMS Erebus and HMS Terror have uncovered all sorts of fascinating artifacts. They even found a seaman's chest that had been down there for over a century. These objects, they really bring the past to life, you know?
It's amazing how much they're able to find. I mean, these ships have been underwater for, what, almost 200 years?
I know, it's incredible. But unfortunately, these dives are also highlighting the impact of climate change on the wrecks.
Oh, right. You mentioned that earlier.
Yeah, it's a serious problem. The warmer waters and stronger storms, they're taking their toll. We could lose these wrecks before we even have a chance to fully study them.
That's such a shame. It's a reminder that we need to act now to address climate change, not just for the sake of our planet, but for the sake of our shared history as well.
Couldn't agree more. And you know, climate change isn't the only threat to these wrecks. Looting is still a major problem.
Right, people stealing pieces of history for profit. It's sad.
It really is. But you know what's not sad? The fact that they finally identified a shipwreck off the coast of Australia as the SS Nemesis.
The SS Nemesis. Remind me, what was that one?
It was an iron-hulled steamship that sank back in 1904. Sadly, 32 people lost their lives in that tragedy.
Wow, that's a sobering reminder of the power of the sea, isn't it?
It really is. But sometimes these shipwreck discoveries can bring a sense of closure, you know? Like solving a mystery that's been lingering for decades. That's what happened with the Milwaukee.
Ah, the Milwaukee, the one that sank in Lake Michigan.
Yep. They finally figured out what happened to her after all these years. It turns out she sank after a collision in dense fog.
Wow, what a story. It's like a piece of history has finally been put to rest.
Mm.
And speaking of uncovering history, sonar surveys are proving to be incredibly useful for finding these lost wrecks.
Totally. Like off the coast of Florida, they found the HMS Tiger, a British warship that ran aground way back in 1742 during the War of Jenkins' Ear.
No way. The War of Jenkins' Ear. I remember learning about that in school. It's amazing to think that a shipwreck from that era is still out there just waiting to be found.
Right. And get this. They were able to identify the wreck thanks to an old logbook that detailed the crew's efforts to lighten the ship after it ran aground.
It's amazing how those old records can be so valuable, isn't it? Like a window into the past.
Totally. Oh, and speaking of windows into the past, they recently discovered 5 dugout canoes built between 5700 and 5100 BCE near Rome.
Dugout canoes from that long ago. Wow, that's pushing it back.
I know, right? They're some of the oldest boats ever found in the Mediterranean. They show us that people were sailing around that region much earlier than we thought.
It's mind-blowing to think about those ancient seafarers navigating the Mediterranean thousands of years ago, you know? What were their lives like? What did they see?
It's amazing to think about, isn't it? And it just goes to show you that the past is full of surprises.
Speaking of surprises, are you ready for some discoveries that might just blow your mind? Stuff that's so out there, it makes you question everything you thought you knew about history.
Hit me with it. I love a good history mystery.
Okay, get this. There's a paper out there claiming that a site in Indonesia called Gunung Padang is actually a pyramid built 25,000 years ago.
25,000 years? Hold on, something's not adding up here. Pyramids are like an Egyptian thing, right?
That's what makes this claim so wild. If it were true, it would completely change our understanding of ancient civilizations and architecture.
So is it true? Is this thing really a 25,000-year-old pyramid?
Well, that's where things get a little murky. A lot of experts are skeptical. They think it might just be a natural rock formation that looks like a pyramid.
Ah, okay, so maybe not a pyramid after all, but still a pretty cool rock formation.
Exactly. And, you know, sometimes those natural wonders are just as impressive as the things humans build. Okay, ready for another one?
Bring it on.
Okay, so the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam, they decided to do a collaboration with Pokemon.
Pokemon. You mean like Pikachu and all that?
The one and only. They did a whole exhibit combining fine art and pop culture.
Wow, that's an interesting combination. How did that go?
Well, not exactly smoothly, to put it mildly. Tickets sold out instantly, people were going crazy for the merchandise, and some museum staff even got in trouble for their behavior during the exhibit,
Sounds like it was a little chaotic.
to say the least.
Yeah.
But hey, at least it got people talking about art. Okay, last one, and it's a doozy. Remember the story of the stolen ruby slippers from The Wizard of Oz?
Oh, yeah, those famous slippers. What happened? Did they ever find them?
Well, the story just keeps getting weirder. The alleged accomplice in the theft was recently charged with witness tampering and making threats involving compromising photos.
You're kidding. Talk about a scandal. It's like something out of a Hollywood movie.
I know, right? And it all started with a pair of ruby slippers. This deep dive has been a wild ride so far. We've covered so much ground, from ancient tombs and shipwrecks to spicy Roman wine and Pokemon at the Van Gogh Museum.
It just goes to show you, history's never boring.
Never. And there's still so much more to discover. Join us next time as we delve even deeper into the mysteries of the past.
We'll be back with more fascinating stories, so stay tuned.
You know, it's amazing how these ancient discoveries, they really make you think about how connected we are to the past.
It really is. It's like the past isn't just some, dusty old story. It's still shaping us today in ways we don't even realize.
Right. Like, remember that research on multiple sclerosis? The one about the ancient herders and the genetic link?
Oh, yeah, that was a fascinating one. So they found that herders who migrated to Europe from Western Eurasia about 5,000 years ago, they carried this specific gene variant that's associated with MS.
Okay, so how does that tie into MS today?
Well, as these herders spread across Europe, so did this gene, right? And that might be part of the reason why MS is more prevalent in some areas today.
So something that happened 5,000 years ago could be impacting our health today.
Yeah.
That's pretty wild.
It really is. The past is way more connected to the present than we often think. And you know what else is helping us connect those dots? Ancient DNA analysis.
Oh yeah, ancient DNA. It's like unlocking all these secrets about our ancestors.
Exactly. We're learning so much about genetic conditions, the evolution of diseases, all that stuff.
Didn't they find evidence of Down syndrome in ancient skeletons?
They did. It's pretty amazing, actually. Identifying Down syndrome in ancient remains, it takes a lot of careful analysis. Looking at specific skeletal features and, if possible, analyzing the DNA for that extra copy of chromosome 21.
Wow. It's mind-boggling what scientists can figure out these days. What other secrets do you think ancient DNA holds?
Well, we're already learning so much about the history of tuberculosis, for example. Did you know they found what might be the oldest known case of TB in Neanderthal remains?
Neanderthals had tuberculosis. That's intense. How long ago are we talking?
Like 35,000 years ago?
35,000 years. Wow. So tuberculosis has been around for a really, really long time.
It has. It makes you think about how TB might have influenced human evolution, you know? It's a whole new perspective on the disease.
Totally. Okay, I have to ask about this one. I read something about poison seeds found in a bone.
Oh, yeah. That was a weird one. So in the Netherlands, they found this hollowed out bone from the Roman era, and inside, black henbane seeds.
Black henbane. That sounds uh, a little scary.
It is. It's a super poisonous plant, but in small doses, it can be used for, like, medicine and rituals.
So is this like an ancient medicine kit or something?
Maybe. It's possible. Or maybe it was used in some kind of ceremony. We don't know for sure. But it shows how ancient people really knew their plants, you know? Even the dangerous ones.
It's fascinating, right? Like we think we're so advanced, but our ancestors had all this knowledge about the natural world.
Totally. And as we keep exploring, we keep finding more evidence of that.
This whole deep dive has been incredible, hasn't it? All
Yeah.
these discoveries, they really paint a picture of the past, not just dates and facts, but real people, real lives.
It's like we're time traveling in a way, getting these glimpses into the lives of people who lived thousands of years ago.
Right, from bog bodies and Viking swords to those spicy Roman wines and Pokemon at the Van Gogh Museum.
Oh man, don't forget the porridge.
Huh, of course not. The porridge. It's all part of the story. And I can't wait to see what other stories we uncover in the future.
Me too. The past is full of surprises, just waiting to be discovered.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and most importantly, keep learning from the past.
And keep listening to The Deep Dive.